Good evening. Let's start with a quick audio check. Can somebody let me know in the comment section if you can hear me okay? Okay, I'm seeing thumbs up. Great. Well, I am excited to be with you tonight. It really makes my uh-oh. I had a different computer on over there and I forgot to hit the silent button on it. Great audio. Awesome. Well, we are 5x5. I love it. We are going to dive in. I hope everyone's having a great week. I realize it's only a Monday, but hopefully your week is off to a great start. Got a lot to talk about tonight. I had about a 2-week absence. I did a live stream 2 weeks ago tonight, and then that came right on the heels of me getting home from Monerotopia. I had just been home about an hour or two from Mexico City, and that's when I did the live stream 2 weeks ago. And I'm very thankful that I went to Mexico, made some great connections down there, met some fantastic people. I'm very thankful that I came home when I did. I got home on Monday, and I think it was the following Sunday when all of the violence started in Mexico. So very, very rough situation for Americans that were stuck down there. It was a rough situation for Mexican nationals who live in Mexico, and just a rough situation all the way around. So very thankful to be home. After my live stream last 2 weeks ago, I was here for 2 days, had university work to do, and then I took off to Fort Lauderdale, where I had a Brush Fires of Freedom tour a week ago last Friday. Again, it was a very busy trip. I had a speaking engagement, but I also met with some people that I had not previously met in person, people that I only knew over the internet. And so it was great connecting with people in person, and again, made some really great contacts down there. Anyway, long story short, I got tied up with travel and with my responsibilities at the university, and I fell behind on getting videos out. Late last night, actually very early this morning, I published a video. It was called Surveillance Bingo. And the premise behind Surveillance Bingo, it's based on the travel game that I played as a kid, back in the days pre-iPhones, pre-iPads. When you were a 70s kid and your family goes on a long drive on vacation, there's not a whole lot to do in the back seat of a car. So we had a game called Travel Bingo, where you're looking for cows, you're looking for phone booths, you're looking for blue houses, you're looking for something out the window just to keep you occupied. But I took that concept of a bingo card and I filled it with 25 different types of surveillance, from drones to license plate readers to smart street lights to microphones in public restrooms. And yes, that is a real thing. They're called halo sensors. But I made a bingo card with all these different types of surveillance. And I made a video that I posted last night. Some of you may have already seen it. But I went over, didn't go into great detail on any one of these, but I covered a whole lot of different types of surveillance that we are being subjected to daily. Some of it you may already be aware of, some of it may be new to you. But what I was really trying to do was establish we are being surveilled in many ways that most people aren't even aware of. And what this data is being collected for is collecting what's called pattern of life data. And here's where it gets really ugly really fast. Pattern of life data really documents your life minute by minute. How much electricity are you using at home? And when you quit using much electricity at home, that's an indicator that you may have left the house. Even if you left your cell phone in the house, you may be gone if you're not using much electricity. Well, this pattern of life data, one of the main things that it can be used for is to identify your associates. If your cell phone and somebody else's cell phone are in close proximity, then cell phone carriers know that the two of you are together. But it goes beyond cell phones. What if I leave my cell phone at home, but I get in someone's car and I happen to have, they're upstairs, I have AirPods. What if I have my AirPods on me, even if I don't have my phone? I've got a smartwatch, I've got AirPods. If I am in someone else's car and we drive by the right sensors made by Leonardo, the sensors are called signal trace. But if I am in somebody else's car with my AirPods in my pocket and my smartwatch on my wrist, the signal trace will pick up the electronic signature of my watch and my AirPods and say, these electronic signatures were seen in this car with this license plate. And then that same sensor can say, John Padfield must be in that person's car. We know that because those devices are normally seen in John Padfield's car, because every time I drive by it in my car, my watch and my AirPods would be associated with my license plate, but now they're being associated with somebody else's license plate. Logical conclusion, I'm in somebody else's car. If I give somebody a ride to work, those same sensors could say, oh, this person is in John Padfield's car because we know this is his car because of the license plate, but we're seeing somebody else's cell phone, laptop, pacemaker, continuous glucose monitor, whatever. We're seeing that in John's car, so John must know this person. This is how these types of sensors can start building out known associates of everyone, and it's part of the dossier that is being compiled on every last one of us, whether we like it or not. Now, there's a very common refrain I'm sure you've heard. Anyone who cares about privacy hears this all the time. If you're not doing anything wrong, why do you care? Well, I'm going to answer that question tonight, and for those of you that have already seen my video, you know where this is going. Let's switch back to my other screen, and I'm going to try and do a better job tonight talking to the right camera. Let's open a new window, and let's take a look at a piece of legislation in Florida. Florida House Bill 945, 2026. That just distinguishes it from House Bill 945 from last year. Okay. This is the bill I'm looking for. This is a bill that I talked about in my video, Surveillance Bingo. Now, I mentioned this bill a couple of times, but I didn't deep dive it. That's coming in a video later this week. But for those of you that are on the live stream, or those of you watching the live stream after the fact, I want to draw a couple of points out on this. So we're going to take a look at exactly what Florida House Bill 945 does. Here is the status of the bill, and I'm going to zoom in on this just a bit. It was filed in the Florida House on December 30th, 2025, and in Indiana, when a bill is filed in the House or the Senate, it normally goes to one committee, and then if the committee approves the bill, it goes back to the House or the Senate, depending on which chamber it's in. But after it goes to committee and the committee passes it, then it goes to the full House or full Senate for a vote. And if it passes that, then it goes to the opposite chamber and the process repeats. This is the first time I've seen this. It may be common in Florida. I am not that familiar with Florida's procedures, but this one bill was sent to the Government Operations Subcommittee, then to the Judiciary Committee, then the Budget Committee, and then the State Affairs Committee. And the bill is now in the Government Operations Subcommittee. Now, we can see the history of the bill. On January 29th, it passed the Government Operations Subcommittee, and then it went to the Judiciary Committee. On January 30th, it was added to the Judiciary Committee agenda, and then on February 3rd, it was passed by the Judiciary Committee, and it went to the Budget Committee. And as of February 24th, a week ago, It had been passed by the Budget Committee, and it's on its way to the State Affairs Committee. And if you come back up here and look at this list of committees that it's gone to, we can start checking boxes. It passed this committee, it passed this committee, it passed this committee, it passed this committee. It's now sitting in the State Affairs Committee, and we'll see what happens to it now. But the fact that it has already passed multiple committees means it has some momentum behind it. It has not stalled out yet. I want to stress something. There are 50 states, obviously. Each state, except for, I believe, Nebraska, has 2 chambers, a House and a Senate. I believe Nebraska is the one state in the Union that has a unicameral system, meaning they only have one legislative body rather than having a bicameral system like U.S. Congress and the other 49 states. When you look at how many state representatives and how many state senators there are across the country, it varies state by state, but we're talking several thousand people serve as a state representative or a state senator somewhere in the United States. Just because a bill is written is no indication that it's actually going to turn into law. But this one has already cleared multiple committees. This one has a real shot at becoming law. So let's take a look at the text of the bill. What exactly does this bill do? And trust me, I served 2 terms in the Indiana House. I have seen a lot of bad bills. Thankfully, the majority of them were assigned to committee where they died a very deserved death. That's part of the job of a committee chairman. I was not a committee chairman, but I was a summer study chairman. Won't get into all the details of that, but basically I have served as a chairman, but it wasn't for a full committee. It was more like a subcommittee. But anyway, this is the bill that is currently making its way through the Florida legislature. And let's just read parts of it together. It's about 5 pages, so I'm not going to read it verbatim. But this is Florida House Bill 945 that has already cleared multiple House committees in Florida. A bill to be enacted, an act relating to the statewide counterintelligence and counterterrorism unit. And I am going to minimize using the T word because we're on YouTube, and YouTube really does not like the T word. So when you hear me say T word, you know what I mean. It's one of the reasons I have a Patreon account. I can say things on there without having to censor myself. Anyway, let's get to the heart of what this bill does. Part of what this bill does is it defines the term adversary intelligence entity. Now, in my video, I referred to it as enemy of the state. Enemy and adversary are synonyms. If someone is my enemy, they are also my adversary and vice versa. So what is an adversary intelligence entity? I grew up, toward the end of the Cold War. When I hear adversary intelligence entity, my mind thinks, oh, you mean the KGB. It's long gone now, but when I was growing up, the KGB was the villain in a lot of James Bond movies. But what is an adversary intelligence entity? It sounds like this would be a foreign intelligence agency. Could be from China, could be from North Korea, could be from Russia. But adversary intelligence entity sounds like this is a government-sponsored intelligence agency. If that's what you're thinking, you're wrong. Well, you're partially wrong. It's much, much broader than that. So let's take a look at exactly what it is. As used in this section, here's the definition. As used in this section, the term adversary intelligence entity includes, but is not limited to, remember that, that's important. It includes, but it is not limited to, any national, foreign, multinational, friendly, competitor, opponent, adversary, or recognized enemy government. Okay, that sounds like a whole lot of extra words to say any government. Whether the government is recognized as an enemy, or whether they are friendly, whether they're a competitor, whether they're an opponent or an adversary. Basically, it says any government or non-governmental organization. Okay, so the definition of a adversary intelligence entity is any government or any non-governmental organization or any company, business, or corporation or consortium, group, agency, cell, T-word, insurgent, guerrilla entity. Okay, we're listing some bad guys. Or any person. So this adversary intelligence entity could be a government, could be a non-governmental entity, could be a business or a company, or could be an individual person. Well, what qualifies them as an adversary intelligence entity? Any person who's demonstrated actions, views, or opinions. We're not just saying they have done something wrong. We're saying they're thinking the wrong thoughts. Any person whose views or opinions, you don't have to have actions. It's actions, views, or opinions that are a threat or are inimical. And drop something in the chat box if you know what the word inimical means. Just say yes. And if you're not familiar with the word inimical, just say no. But I'm really curious here. My suspicion is most people don't know this word because I've got a PhD and I had to look it up. The Swiss Chalet says a thought criminal. Yes, that is exactly what this is. A person whose views or opinions are a threat or are inimical to the interest of this state, meaning the state of Florida, or the United States of America. Okay, I've seen one person who knows what inimical means. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to hit the button to switch the screen, so sorry about that. I thought I had that highlighted. I've got my main screen right over here, and there's two images on there. One is what's being broadcast to YouTube, and the other is like on deck, meaning I hit one button and what's on deck becomes what gets sent to YouTube, but I forgot to hit that button, so sorry about that. But this is House Bill 945. A person whose demonstrated actions, views, or opinions are a threat or are inimical to the interest of this state or the United States of America. And I saw a ton of people saying, no, you don't know what that word means. Inimical means harmful. So you might wonder, why didn't they just say harmful? Well, because then it would be too easy to read. It would be even more obvious what they're doing. If a person holds views or opinions that are a threat to or harmful to the interest of the state of Florida or the United States of America, then that person is an adversary of the state. Hence my use of the term enemy of the state. Enemy and adversary are synonyms. So this leads to the next question. If I am an enemy of the state for holding views that are harmful to the interest of the state, I would really like to know what those interests are. And I'm not trying to be flippant. I'm not trying to exaggerate. I am being 100% serious about this. There are billionaires. Bill Gates is the first one that comes to mind, but he's not alone. There are billionaires who have convinced politicians the number one threat to the world isn't really climate change. It isn't nuclear war. The number one threat to the world is overpopulation. Now, they go on to say that a whole bunch of other things, including climate change, are related to overpopulation. But if the state considers overpopulation to be a serious issue, then do I become an enemy of the state if I am encouraging people to get married and have kids? Because if the state has an interest in limiting population, then it kind of makes sense that if I hold the view that people ought to get married and have kids, then I'm an enemy of the state. But on the other hand, there are people in office today who are trying to encourage people to have more kids because the birth rate in the United States is below replacement. Had it not been for immigration, the U.S. population would have been dropping for the last couple of decades because the birth rate in the United States has been dropping since the 1960s. I can't remember the exact year when it dropped below replacement, but the population of the United States would be decreasing had it not been for immigration. And so there are people in office today who are encouraging people to have more kids. If I were out advocating for people to not have more kids, does that make me an enemy of the state? And you can see where I'm going with this. These terms are so incredibly broad, you could read absolutely anything into them. If I hold opinions that are contrary to or harmful to the interest of the state, that makes me an enemy of the state. Okay, we'll come back and look at what are the consequences to me if I'm an enemy of the state. But I would like for somebody to list what are the interests of the state, just to make sure that my opinions aren't going to contradict those. I'm lying. I don't care if my opinions contradict those. I would like to know which of my opinions are going to get me in trouble. Doesn't mean I'm going to change my opinions, but I would like to know which of my opinions are going to get me in trouble. I am 100% against the surveillance state. It's obvious the state of Florida loves the surveillance state. That's why they have so many flock cameras and other forms of surveillance. But if I speak up against mass surveillance, does that make me an enemy of the state? What I see here is the weaponization of opinion. You hold the wrong opinions. That is a thought crime. And not to take off on a tangent, those of you that regularly watch my live streams know that I take off on tangents from time to time. That's just what I do. When I was in the Indiana legislature back in the 1990s, that was kind of around the time that hate crime legislation started becoming popular. And I have been against hate crime legislation forever. From the very first time I heard the term, I was opposed to it. And that led to some people calling me some horrible names saying, oh, you think it's okay for white people to go out and do blah, blah, blah. No, I don't think that's right at all. But whether person A attacks person B because of the color of their hair, the color of their shoes, or the color of their skin, I don't care. Punish the action of person A attacking a person B. Why they did it, I really don't care. What I care about is don't attack people. And so I have always been against hate crime legislation. Punish the act, don't punish the thought. Because when you get into the realm of we're going to punish thoughts, you're going to get 5 years for attacking this person if you do it because you were broke, but you're going to get 10 years if you attack that person because you don't like their religion, their ethnicity, et cetera, et cetera. I think that is an incredibly dangerous area when we start assigning punishment based on what we think somebody else was thinking. And that's what I see this legislation doing. Now, let's take a look at what happens if I hold views that are deemed to be a threat or inimical to the interest of the state of Florida, assuming that this bill gets passed. What actually happens? Well, the Domestic Security Task Force, established under this other law, the unit shall identify threats by analyzing patterns of life, gathering actionable intelligence. Okay, let's take this step by step. The unit, we're talking about the Domestic Security Task Force, they shall identify threats. We're talking about threats of people that have the wrong thoughts. And they're going to identify threats by analyzing patterns of life. What are patterns of life? They're incredibly boring. What time do you wake up in the morning? What time do you take a shower? How long of a shower do you take? What time do you leave for work? Where do you go for lunch? Who do you talk to? What do you watch on Netflix when you get home? That's pattern of life. And the unit shall identify threats by analyzing patterns of life. What they're looking for is deviations. You normally go to work, come home, spend 3 hours in front of the TV, go to bed. But over the last 6 weeks, you have started going to this restaurant on the other side of town and meeting with these 4 other people, because we know that because your cell phones were in very close proximity, indicating you were sitting at the same table. And that's pattern of life. Your pattern has changed because you're no longer going home by yourself. You're now going somewhere and meeting some people. And if one of those people is an enemy of the state, you're associating with an enemy of the state. Maybe you're an enemy of the state. This doesn't go anywhere good. This ends poorly. I've studied history, and I hate jumping to the guy with the funny mustache in World War II. But I'm saying, look at history. What happens when you have a designated domestic security task force who is charged with investigating threats meaning people that hold the wrong opinions, and they start digging into those people's personal lives looking for any deviations. So the unit shall identify threats by analyzing patterns of life. And patterns of life, that's what you get from flock cameras. That's what you get from Leonardo signal trace. That's what you get from automatic content recognition that's built into every major brand of smart TV. That's what you get from so many things that we use on a daily basis. So the unit's going to analyze patterns of life. They're going to be gathering actionable intelligence, formulating effective plans of action. Okay, what law have I broken? Well, you hold the wrong opinions. And if you hold the wrong opinions, you are a threat. And if you are a threat, they are going to formulate effective plans of action. That doesn't sound good. Still kind of vague. So what will these effective plans of action involve? And by executing arrest or by revealing its intent to compel a response, using all counterintelligence and counter-T-word tradecraft necessary to protect the state from enemies of the state. Okay. If I hold the wrong opinions, you're going to dig into my patterns of life, gather actionable intelligence. Can be looking for something to blackmail me with? What does that mean? You're going to gather actionable intelligence based on my thought crimes. You're going to formulate effective plans of action, and by executing arrest, I still haven't seen a crime yet. What are you arresting people for? The unit may conduct direct action missions. Okay. Let's talk about what a direct action mission means. That's a military term. In the last week, we have seen direct action missions over in Iran. Direct action mission is the opposite of intelligence gathering. Intelligence gathering is generally done on the down low. What information can we extract about a person without that person being aware? But direct action missions implies very often the use of force. They may conduct direct action missions on its own against a threat or may incorporate with or into other units to counteract and stop identifiable threats. So anyway, this is what's moving through the Florida House. And again, had they been tighter with their language, that they are talking about foreign, multinational governments, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. But they went so broad. And remember this, it includes, but is not limited to, everything that we read. Can you think of anything that is not a part of what they've already read or what I've already read? I guess if outer space aliens landed, that might not be specifically mentioned here, but remember, this is not limited to humans. It includes, but is not limited to. It seems to me what they listed here includes just about everything I could possibly think of, from governments to individual people to businesses. But anyway, that's what had me wound up when I was making last night's video, and you will hear more about this in a video coming this week. And I've been doing a lot of talking, so I want to catch up on all of the comments I've been seeing go by over here. So I'm going to switch my camera again. And I'm going to scroll back and pick up some of these comments that I missed. Yep, you're looking at the wrong camera. Sorry about that. I did not see your comment until after the fact. If you only have one camera, you don't have to worry about where to look. True, but I do like having that flexibility of being able to look over here and read a screen and still have my face on the screen. Do we really care where he's looking? Yep. Yeah, I wasn't following comments at that time. I do my best to multitask, but I usually fail miserably at multitasking. I can be laser focused for hours at a time, especially when I get into research mode. Quite literally, when I get into research mode, it may be 10 p.m. and I start researching, tracing the history of something or reading about a technology, and all of a sudden I notice that it's 4 a.m. and I've been sitting at my desk for 6 hours straight doing something, because it's almost like I go into a temporal distortion. It's like time doesn't exist when I get into research mode. But I can be laser focused. My weakness is trying to multitask. So anyway, that's why you see me kind of do an abrupt shift from talking about something that I'm passionate about and then going in and reading your comments. I'm passionate about my audience and the comments that you're leaving too, but I just seem to be incapable of fluidly switching from talking about something and going into comments and coming back smoothly. So I kind of break it up a little bit. Anyway, yeah, the T word. Yeah, the T word is rhymes with terror. Wrong think. A bunch of people saying no, that they were not familiar with that term. From the Latin meaning hostile, yes. That's a 50-cent word. What happened to we the people? Great question. It was the 1990s when I served in political office, and I remember at the national level, there were some figures. I won't get into naming names. They weren't people I knew personally, but they were people that I kind of followed before following people was really a thing. I followed their writings. Many of them were prolific authors. But one of them made a comment about, why is it when guys like us get elected, they quit being guys like us? And it was a very legitimate question because in the 1980s, in the early 1990s, there were a number of people that ran for office vowing that they were going to get in and change things. And they got elected. There was a mass turnover in Congress in 1994. People went in that had made a lot of populist statements to get elected, and it didn't take long at all until they started looking and sounding just like the people they had ran against. And that's where that phrase came up. Why is it when people like us get elected, they quit being people like us? So what happened to we the people? I think that we have a very corrupting system that rewards the wrong things, and it molds people into what they initially opposed. It has a corrupting influence and turns people into what they once opposed. We need defined terminology. Yes. Now here is the one potential bright spot out of this Florida legislation. Well, I take that back. Because it is a state law, it would not typically go to the United States Supreme Court. The U.S. Constitution requires that laws be clear. You cannot uphold a vague law. And there have been vague laws successfully challenged at the Supreme Court level. There was one in particular that I remember. This has just been a few years ago, but it had to do with brandishing a firearm. And the law made it illegal to handle a gun in a threatening manner. Okay. Conceptually, I understand that, but the law can't be conceptual. Here's my analogy. If the state of Indiana passed a law that said the speed limit on I-65 is not too fast. Okay, if I drive 60, am I safe? If I drive 70, am I safe? The law says don't go too fast. Well, no, that's a vague law. Vague laws are subject to interpretation. You go past one state trooper at 70 and he says that's fine. You go past another state trooper at 70 and they say that's too fast. No, you're getting into situations where the law is not going to be evenly applied because it is way too subjective. The same thing happened when it talked about handling a firearm in a hostile manner. What does that mean? Does it mean if I have a grumpy look on my face while I'm holding a firearm, is that a hostile manner? It's too subject to interpretation. It doesn't say if you're pointing it at someone, it says if you're handling it in a hostile manner. Well, that's just too vague. So when I look at this bill, I would have to dig into the Florida Constitution to see if they have an equivalent that says laws can't be vague. Just from a good law standpoint, laws should not be vague. They should not be subject to interpretation where one officer says you're breaking the law and another officer says you're not, or where people don't know if they're breaking the law or not. So anyway, we'll see what happens. Activate Operation Stasi. In my Signals and Society series, where I view modern society through the lens of movies, books, and TV shows, I've only had 3 videos so far. One was the Twilight Zone episode, The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. One was Black Mirror Nosedive. And one was Black Mirror Archangel. One of the videos that I have planned for that series is a great movie that came out in the early 2000s. The movie is called The Lives of Others. I highly, highly recommend that movie, The Lives of Others. The movie is set in the latter days of East Germany. And it really shows what happens to innocent people when you get on the radar of the wrong people. It is an incredibly depressing movie. I'll warn you ahead of time. It is an incredibly depressing movie. But it also really feels like a gut punch, because here is a young couple, a well-connected political figure starts taking interest in the woman, and before he can make his moves on her, something needs to happen to her fiance. So go bug their apartment. This is set at a time period when cameras were too big to make it practical to go put cameras in someone's apartment. But go bug their apartment. Let's get something on the fiance so we can have him arrested, get him out of the way, and then the political figure can make his move on the woman once her fiance is locked up. It is a horribly depressing movie, but it shows just how bad surveillance can go and how easily it can be abused by people in power. That is why the Georgia Guidestones were constructed, then destroyed. That's they did finally figure out who paid for the Georgia Guidestones. The individual has been identified. Now, where he got the money, because it appears like that money may have been contributed by multiple figures, but it is known now who paid for it, who actually went in and placed the order to have the Georgia Guidestones created. Yep. Those rules backfired for China. They have majority elderly population. Yes, their one-child policy is causing some major problems for them. Please make a video on HIK Vision facial recognition cameras. I'm going to screenshot that. I am not familiar with that one, but I will take a look at it. That language is dangerous and mood dependent, very subjective. Absolutely it is. Privacy channels discussing counter surveillance might be, yes. I read comments left on my videos from many of you concerned about my physical safety, and I'm aware that I'm stepping on toes. I'm not losing sleep over it. I do solicit your prayers. I am a man of faith, and I believe prayer goes a long way, and I do solicit your prayers. But I am not the type to back down. And so I try to be cautious where I can, but I am not going to be cautious at the expense of silencing myself or restraining myself. Now, as I mentioned earlier, YouTube is much heavier on moderation than other platforms like Patreon. There are some videos that I want to make, and they're not outrageous. I'm not calling for people to go out and do anything illegal, but they are mature discussions on sensitive topics that the YouTube algorithm doesn't really like. And I really feel constrained because to make some of the videos that I want to make, I would really have to speak in code, and that drives me nuts. And so there are a few topics that I just cannot do justice to on YouTube. Patreon has much, much looser moderation policies. They do have moderation. You can't put illegal content out there. I wouldn't want to put illegal content out there. But anyway, I do have to limit myself just a bit on YouTube, but in terms of backing down and avoiding certain discussions, I'm going to keep having those discussions, especially at my live events. Georgia Guidestones gave away too much. Yep. Why do we need higher birth rate? What exactly makes a low birth rate bad? In the short term, nothing. In the long term, you've got to look at long-term trends. When the birth rate is below replacement, you would have a smaller and smaller population. Burden of proof is on them to prove that you're a threat to the state. Well, that's the way it's supposed to work. But unfortunately, the state of Florida has a much, much bigger budget than I do. And so if, just a week and a half ago, I was speaking in Fort Lauderdale. And my guess is if the wrong person was in the room, I was not calling for people to do anything illegal, but I was sharing some really dangerous ideas if you are a supporter of authoritarianism. Could I have been labeled an enemy of the state for the views that I was espousing? That bill that I read a minute ago, House Bill 945, is so broad. Were my views a threat to the interest of the state of Florida? Well, the state of Florida doesn't give me a list of what their interests are. So I have to guess what are their interests, and then I have to guess if my views would be deemed harmful or a threat to those interests. And it just makes it a horrible, horrible law. First Amendment violation, I agree completely. I believe in taking care of the planet and not overrunning it with humans. I like animals and plant life. There's a balance to be had. What most people consider maintaining population is around 2.1 children per woman. And that's because not every child grows up to have children of their own due to infertility issues, due to childhood death, things of that nature. When the birth rate is significantly below 2.1, you're into decreasing population, which eventually, not going to happen in the next 10 years. But if the birth rate is consistently lower than replacement, eventually mankind goes extinct. If the birth rate is significantly higher than replacement, eventually you get into overpopulation. And so there's an argument to be made there about striking balance. They weren't supposed to make 1984 a reality. I saw a hat that said "Make 1984 fiction again." We need to remove Rep. Danny Alvarez. He's the representative who wrote the bill. Okay, I had not started digging into that yet. That was something I was going to do for the video that I'm making to find out who introduced that bill. Anyone involved in promoting this bill, I really, really hope they get voted out of office. This is a horrible piece of legislation. Have you read Fahrenheit 451? The book is becoming our depressing reality. I have. For anyone not familiar with it, Fahrenheit 451 is the temperature at which paper ignites. Of course, there's variation depending on the type of paper, but the principle is 451 is when paper would ignite. The premise of the book was you had mass censorship, and dangerous books were banned, and people had to give up their books. One of the other Signals and Society episodes that I have planned is a comparison of 1984 versus Brave New World. Originally, I was going to make 1984 its own video, but I really think understanding 1984 in the context of Brave New World would make a more compelling video. And again, many of you may already know this, some of you may not, but more people are familiar with 1984, George Orwell, Big Brother, Ministry of Truth. There's a lot of ideas that came out of the book 1984. The surveillance state, televisions that watched people in their living rooms, and the idea of Big Brother, meaning the government, who was constantly watching what people were doing. That was all ideas from 1984. The Ministry of Truth was in charge of rewriting history. So whenever some historic fact became inconvenient, the Ministry of Truth would rewrite the books. And then there was the book Brave New World. And Brave New World was another dystopian future book, but there is a night and day difference between these two dystopias. I don't want to live in either of them. But when you really start drawing the contrast between these two books, these books were written something like 7 or 8 years apart when they were written, and they were both set decades in the future. Excuse me one second. And I do have my Civil Liberty Sentinels mug now. Both of these books were set decades into the future, and they were written just a few years apart from each other. The big contrast, in 1984, the government was really worried about censorship. Worried as in they were actively practicing censorship because they wanted to control people. In Brave New World, there was no censorship at all, because nobody read. Why do you need to censor books when nobody reads anyway? In 1984, obedience was compelled through force. In Brave New World, obedience was induced through pleasure. Basically, you kept the population medicated to a degree, and you got a docile, compliant people because of what they were consuming. So anyway, I am planning on making a video comparing 1984 to Brave New World. Okay, this is YouTube432. I think I saw one of your comments. I can't remember the name, but I think I saw one of your comments from earlier today on one of my videos. I'm going to screenshot this one also. So the private routers, I have not made a video about that yet, but I will look into that and see if there's enough information that I could make a good video about that. Car dash cams, absolutely. I am working on that video already. The above privacy phone, I've already made a video on that. That's probably been 5 or 6 months ago. I did a comparison of the above privacy phone and the Brax privacy phone. And you can go out and see my complete review in my video. The really short version of it is I liked both of them. I think they are both viable options. There is a difference between them. The Brax phone is a lower cost phone. I would say it's not as polished, whereas the above privacy phone is a Pixel 8. At least that's the above privacy phone that I bought was a Pixel 8. It's very polished. It's a good phone, but it's a Pixel. The difference is the operating system has been replaced. It is totally de-Googled. It's running the above operating system, which is a variant of graphene. So between the two of them, which do I recommend? It really is going to come down to personal taste. But in my video, I show you pictures that I took on both. Both of them seem to be very secure in terms of, I ran WireGuard on them to make sure that they weren't phoning home and sending off lots of data. Neither of them were. So between them, personally, I kind of like the above phone better, but that's not a knock on the Brax phone. Now, I do want to bring up one other point on this. I cannot give you a universal recommendation saying this is the phone for everybody. The right phone for you is going to depend on circumstances that you have to evaluate. What is different about the above phone? They do not make their own hardware. They're buying Google phones, and then they're putting their own operating system on it. If you are comfortable doing it, you can go out to Walmart or wherever you want to buy it. You can buy a Pixel 8. You can flash it with a copy of graphene, and you can have it lower cost than what Above sells it for. Excuse me. If you are the type of person who wants a quick solution and you're willing to pay a little more, Above makes a good phone. But if you want to save money, you can go out and buy a Pixel 8, and at least today you can put graphene on it. I have heard that Android is making some changes that's going to make it more difficult to do this in the future. But as of today, to the best of my knowledge, you can still go buy a Pixel 8 and put graphene on it yourself and save some money. The Rob Braxman phone. Again, this is going to come down to your personal situation. What are you trying to be private from? Because I'll use this analogy. If I do not want facial recognition when I'm out in public, I could wear a hockey mask. Now, if I wear a hockey mask, that is going to prevent facial recognition from identifying me, but it's going to make everyone in the restaurant turn and stare. Am I more private if everyone's turning at me and staring at me because I'm wearing a hockey mask? And the reason I bring this up, depending on what you are trying to be private from, what are you trying to protect your privacy against? The fact that you're carrying a privacy phone could attract attention. In the United States, at least today, this probably isn't as big of an issue, but I have spoken to people that have recently been in Europe, and they told me that in Europe, if you're carrying a privacy phone, that by itself is going to get you a lot of attention. And so just wanted to share that. I like the Rob Braxman phone. It's a good budget-friendly phone. The Above phone is a little more expensive. It's a little more polished, but I liked both of them. I currently have and am in the process of evaluating the Up privacy phone, the unplugged phone. All of my initial impressions are very, very positive on it. I'll be making a video on that sometime soon. Excuse me. The bigger issue for every one of these phones, though, is how do you get service? And when I was at Monerotopia, the people that I met from Watchman Privacy, they gave me a recommendation for a cellular service that is probably going to be more private. I want to check it out for myself before I actually do any type of a recommendation. I'll try and get that done before my next live stream so I can tell you about it then. I'm not trying to hide anything. It's just I don't want to give a recommendation until I've tested it myself. The unplugged phone, this is not a recommendation yet. I'm telling you that my initial findings are very positive, but I'm not complete with my testing yet, so I'm not giving it a recommendation at this point. But my initial findings look very positive. Okay. This is insane how many other states are doing this. I am going to attempt to answer that in my video coming out later this week. I have heard of one other state that introduced a very similar bill. However, in that state, it died a very quick death because the whole legislature said, get that out of here. Roger that, John. If someone attacks someone else, there's an excellent chance hate is already involved. Absolutely. I asked Larissa Sweet about Flock cameras. She voted for it, and she thinks it's a wonderful tool. She sent me Flock's mission statement. Really scary. That is scary. mission statements are kind of a running joke. Yeah, no company's ever done anything contrary to their mission statements before. Yes, a video from the HIK Vision and Dahua cameras and the FCC ban on them. Okay, this is getting more interesting. I'm going to take a screenshot of that as well, because that is another camera that I am not familiar with. Who determines thoughts? Yep. Are you allowed to feel happy that your kid won a tournament? Or is that pride? Are you allowed to be jealous? Yeah, it is really, really a dark path when you start regulating what people think. Where's the Clippy gang? Better yet, leave it at home. Okay, I want to make this point. I am a big believer in Faraday bags, because there are times that I go somewhere and I may not want to be tracked. Not because I'm doing anything illegal or immoral, but sometimes it's nobody's business where I go. And I know, I have proof, turning your phone off is not enough. I have Faraday bags that I have tested that I know work very effectively. Now I have to have a moment of reflection before I put my phone in a Faraday bag. Because AI is constantly analyzing our pattern of life data, what does AI think when my phone disappears off the face of the earth? If I simply leave my phone at home, AI can see my phone is at home. It knows where I live. It knows my phone is there. It may assume for a while that I am home. However, these phones have gyros in them. The gyros do several important things. If I'm holding it this way, the screen is in portrait. If I hold it this way, the screen will automatically flip into landscape. So that the gyroscopic sensors can detect the orientation of the phone. If the phone is in my pocket and I'm walking, that gyro can detect basically how long my stride is. But AI, if it knows my phone is at home and it knows that the gyros have not moved in the last 4 hours, that means the phone is not in my pocket. Now, maybe I'm asleep. Maybe the phone is on the charger. But if my phone is at home for 24 hours, AI is going to know not only is it at home, but I haven't touched it in 24 hours because the gyros haven't moved. So at some point, AI could start saying, why isn't he picking up his phone? This isn't like him. Normally he picks his phone up once every so many minutes. So if my phone is at home, if my phone disappears because I put it in a Faraday bag, now that feeds into the pattern of life data that's being collected. It's just one more thing to consider because all of our data is being collected 24/7. Excuse me. My throat's getting dry. Come on, Doc, this is about anti-capitalism. Not sure what you mean on that one. About the enemy of the state, people expressing views that are contrary to the interest of the state. If that's what you mean by your comment, this is about anti-capitalism, you are likely right for Florida doing this. But here's the bad part. This law is written so vague, it means whatever the people in power want it to mean. And under Governor Ron DeSantis, I would say that you are probably right that this is about anti-capitalism. But the one thing I know for certain is Governor DeSantis won't be there beyond January. He's term limited. We don't know for sure who's coming in next. We have no idea who's coming in 10 years from now. Once this law is on the books, it can be used however the people in power want to use it. And so I'm not especially worried right now that I'm going to get arrested down in Fort Lauderdale talking about how to evade surveillance. But this law is written in such a way that it could be used that way. Don't we have problems to fix in the economy and infrastructure rather than chasing after citizens over personal opinions? I certainly would agree with that. I see a super chat. Thank you. If you think different than Uncle Sam, you're a criminal. No, that's a dictatorship. Yeah, the way that is worded is so incredibly vague. If you hold views or opinions that are a threat to the interest of the state, you can drive a bus through that hole. Government should not try and regulate emotions. Google has smart glasses that give the wearer your personal information and address. Be right back. Yes, they do. And they look just like this. These are the Meta Ray-Ban glasses. These are first generation. Meta has announced they are coming out with a new feature. Now, this new feature isn't truly new because when these glasses came out in the fall of 2024, two students from Harvard put together a system and they demonstrated it for the media. Clear back in the fall of 2024, two students took these glasses that have cameras in the corners and they set them up so that this would live stream. The cameras would live stream, and the live stream was going through a piece of software, and then it was identifying faces of anyone the students walked past. Then it was looking them up on a website called Pimeys, P-I-M-E-Y-E-S, Pimeys.com, which is a facial recognition website available to the public. They charge $30 or $40 a month. But these students were sending a live stream of whatever they were looking at with their glasses to Pimeys, looking up the identities of people walking past them, then looking up their social media profiles. So they're walking down the hall on a college campus, walking up to women that they had never met before, addressing them by name because that information was being looked up in real time. Kind of creepy. I can imagine 1,001 scenarios where this could be used by scammers or worse. And Meta has now decided, let's make that a feature. So you don't have to go out and put together your own system for facial recognition. Meta's just going to give that to everyone. Excuse me. There are plenty of corporate type people who love all this. They live for the control. The Fox surveillance, best name ever. We've seen those statements here as well. Yeah. Okay, getting a lot of requests about the HIK Vision facial recognition cameras. I will definitely look that up. There's been enough people requesting that. I will definitely do that. Yep, non-military or police use deadly force on civilians. Unfortunately, that's happened way too often. probably my most disturbing thing, I do not mean to be political on this, but the comments that I heard people making on the right after Alex, I can't pronounce his last name, the guy up in Minnesota who was shot and killed. Comments from people on the right about he brought a gun to a protest. I watched that video over and over and over. I never saw him reach for a gun, ever. Was he interfering? He inserted himself into a situation between an ICE officer who, in my opinion, looked to be out of control, shoving a woman. Alex inserted himself into that situation. At that point, because he inserted himself into that situation, a person could make the argument. I'm not saying this is the case. I'm just saying the argument could be made that he was interfering when he inserted himself between the officer and the woman that the officer had just shoved. At that point, when he's wrestled to the ground, I did not see him doing anything violent. I saw violence being perpetrated on him. But the point that I want to focus on, he had a firearm on him. And when I heard high-ranking people talking about you're not allowed to bring a firearm to a protest, personally, I would not. But, number one, protests can break out in places. Number two, there is nothing in the Constitution that says the Second Amendment doesn't apply here, here, and here. Now, the whole point is, and I've really I hate feeling like I have to tiptoe on this, but this is YouTube. There were things going on in Minnesota that I will elaborate on Patreon. One of the things is the juxtaposition. The government is tracking everyone. We know that because of flock cameras. We know that because of Signal Trace. We know that because of Leonardo. All of these different technologies. WebLock, Mobile Fortify, all of this software that ICE has purchased. Government's tracking everyone. There were Signal groups that were sharing information about the government. And the reaction, to paraphrase, you have no right to know where we're staying. You have no right to know what vehicles we're driving. And I'm thinking, who started this? The level of surveillance against the citizenry is off the charts. I am not in favor of interfering with ICE. You can love them, you can hate them, I don't care. I'm not in favor of people physically trying to interfere with them. I'm a big believer in the First Amendment, the right to peacefully assemble. Whether I agree with what somebody's protesting or not is irrelevant. I will support their right to peacefully assemble. If it's not peaceful, that's a different story. But here's where it gets interesting. Can people collect information about what vehicles have been seen in different cities? To me, that looks like a First Amendment issue. If I collect license plate numbers of government vehicles involved in Indiana and I share that with somebody in another state, what law have I broken? Because this is what's happening daily, hourly, that wherever I drive in Indiana, that information is accessible to law enforcement nationwide. So it really strikes me as rules for thee, but not for me, when people are getting investigated for collecting information, but when the tables are turned, that information is just expected. It's like you as a private citizen have no expectation of privacy in public, but they as government absolutely have an expectation of privacy in public. Yep, free state of Florida. Dual Screen, thank you for the super chat. Many viewers are distressed, thinking you are controlled oppo by your age. By your age, very vid with PhD candidate. Tried to write a defense comment to explain where I hope you're coming from, but I really need you to confirm. I'm not completely sure what I can do to confirm. My background is public record. I was elected in Indiana in the House in 1994 and 1996. You can look up my voting record. Before that, 1992, I ran for the same seat as a Libertarian and was defeated as a Libertarian in 1992. I really don't know what else to say about if anyone thinks I'm controlled oppo. I guess you could talk to my wife because she knows that I'm not controlled. I am what I appear to be. I bleed red, white, and blue. I am very pro-liberty. I can quote the Constitution at length. My views were formed deeply by people like Patrick Henry. I have a book that is the speeches Patrick Henry gave on the floor of the Virginia House as he was arguing why Virginia should not adopt the U.S. Constitution. But I guess all I can say is my record speaks for itself. I was a state representative for 2 terms in the Indiana House. I do hold a PhD. My degree is from Purdue University. It's in technology, leadership, and innovation. Not sure what else I can say there. So in terms of trying to defend me, I appreciate your attempt at defending me, but if somebody says I'm controlled opposition, I guess I would just ask for their proof. There's a principle, and this is why under the Constitution, we are innocent until proven guilty, because you cannot prove a negative. If someone accuses me of being controlled opposition, what can I possibly do to prove that I'm not? And that's why burden of proof is on the accuser. If somebody really thinks that I'm controlled opposition, where's the evidence? So anyway, thank you for the super chat. I wish I could give you a better answer, but I really don't know what to say to that. Google is looking to lock down Android from sideloading. Yes, that's what I had read, and that's why I said, to the best of my knowledge, it's still possible to put graphene on a Pixel, but I had read that Google is moving in a direction to make that difficult, if not impossible. I remember thinking a pager was a leash back when I had to have one for work. Oh, the good old days of pagers. Florida has those Boston Dynamic robot dogs too. Okay, was not aware of that, but it doesn't surprise me. I would think so. It's a separate branch of Android OS. Installing graphene has nothing to do with installing your own apps. It's completely a different process. Now, on the Above Privacy phone and the Rob Braxman phone, I do not go to the Google Play Store to download. I go to, I think it's called F-Droid. There are 2 different app stores that I can go to that you don't have to sign into. The Clippy Gang. OpenAI already stepping up to the plate. But then your vehicle may have its own phone blipping out a signature for you. Great point. That's why I drive a 2017. And I did not realize it at the time that I bought it. The 2018s had just come out. This was the last 2017 sitting on the lot. The dealer was eager to get rid of it, and I got a really good price on it because the 2018s had just come out. But I bought it because it was a good buy. But what I found out for my particular make and model of car, 2017 was the last one before the cars started coming with SIM chips in them. So my car, according to Privacy for Cars, and this is a free plug for them. I don't have any type of financial relationship with them. But there's an organization called Privacy, the number 4 cars.com. If you go to privacy4cars.com, you can put in your vehicle identification number, and I know that's a red flag for a lot of people. They don't want to share information. But I have met the people from Privacy for Cars. They make their money working with banks and repo agencies, because many states have laws that say as soon as a car is repossessed, that the data must be wiped from the car. And they do the wiping, they do the certification, which is required by law in many states. That's their business model. They have to know how to wipe the data in every car. And so what they do, they offer a free service to individuals. If you put in your vehicle identification number, they will look up your car, and they will tell you, this is what your car collects on you, this is what your car shares about you. I put in my vehicle identification number, and it told me my car is a, quote, hard drive on wheels. My car collects all types of information on me. However, it lacks the ability to transmit it. If I take my car into the dealership, they can download all that data. Guess what I never do? My car does not go back to the dealership. There is a small family-owned mechanic that I go to who does not extract all that data. But anyway, Privacy for Cars, if you put in your vehicle identification number, they can tell you what's going on, what type of data your car is collecting, what it's sharing. Mr. Bob, thank you for the super chat. The right of people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. Amen. That is the beginning of the Fourth Amendment. The remainder of the amendment goes on to dictate what is required to get a search warrant. But thank you for that, Mr. Bob. Watchman, thank you for the super chat. Hey, Doc, see your flag and National Guard statue. I did combat patrols at I'm sorry, I'm probably going to butcher this name. Al-Takadum in 05. I was with the Texas National Guard in the 36th Infantry. Were you or a family member of the National Guard too? The flag over my shoulder, that is my father-in-law's flag. My father-in-law served both in World War II. He is one of the very few individuals. He served in the U.S. Army in World War II, and then he served in the U.S. Air Force during the Korean War. So that is my father-in-law's flag over my shoulder. The statue over on this side, that is a Friends of the NRA Minuteman statue that I was a sponsor at an NRA dinner several years ago and got that statue. But thank you for your service, and I mean that sincerely. I'm a big fan and supporter of those who wear the uniform. So thank you for your service. Okay. Hope it continues to confuse them. I use the Faraday bag. Yeah, at this point, that's our best bet, even though it probably draws attention to us. Want to see what your phone can do? Install. Okay, not sure how to pronounce that. Firefox. I'm going to screenshot that one too. I have my phone in a Faraday bag even when I'm home. I have met people who have a very serious threat level. Won't go into detail, but I know people that have very serious threat levels way beyond what the general public do. And one of them told me that they do not turn their phone on within several miles of their home. I understand that this type of phone data can be collected if you're being targeted by a bad actor, but are they all just that nosy by default? Okay, great question. And there's a lot of misunderstanding around this because there are multiple threat vectors, and they are very situational. So let's start with the most common. This picks up data from probably 99.9% of the people in the United States. Nearly everyone has one of these. It is very, very rare to find somebody that doesn't. If you have one of these, doesn't matter if it's Android or Apple. Throat's getting dry. Doesn't matter if it's Android or Apple. The device itself is going to collect certain information and share with the manufacturer. That's beyond your control. Then there are the apps that you put on it. And this is where so many people make the mistake of downloading apps they don't need, downloading apps and giving them more permissions than they need. And those apps will start collecting data, in particular, your location data. When I think about when I think about what apps actually need my location data, it's very few of them. I can understand a weather app wanting my current location. So a weather app, if I'm traveling and there is a tornado coming and there is a tornado alert issued, I'd kind of like to know about that. So a weather app, I can understand it wanting my current location so it can send me important notifications. There are so many other apps that companies want you to download. They will incentivize you to download. We'll give you a discount if you order using our app rather than using a website. I have never gotten into putting McDonald's and Taco Bell apps on my phone. Number one, I really try hard not to eat at those places. But number two, even if I had to eat at one of those places, I can go in and pay cash. I don't need to put an app on my phone to find the nearest Taco Bell. But when you have apps on your phone that are collecting your location information, they are selling that to a company, and I'm going to switch back to my other screen. Let's talk about a company called fogdatascience.com. fogdatascience.com. This company actually bothers me worse than Flock does. And here's why. This is what they say on their website. They compile, process, and validate billions of unique data points daily. What this company does, they buy your location data from apps on your phone, and then they compile that data, and they use it to log everywhere you go every day. And I had a conversation with a reporter at a major news outlet just about 2 weeks ago. And I asked them, were you aware of this company? And they were not. And I asked them, as a reporter for a very major news outlet, do you ever get whistleblowers, people that are giving you tips? Yeah. I said, just to let you know, if your article steps on the wrong toes, all it takes is for somebody with access to Fog Data Science. They sell subscriptions just like Netflix. Now, you do have to be in law enforcement to buy a subscription, but they will sell subscriptions, and all you have to do is know the ID of the person's phone that you want to get. And so for this reporter, If I know where that reporter lives, I could look and see, okay, what are the phone IDs that are present where this person lives? If they're married, maybe there's 2 IDs. I can pick one of those IDs and follow it because it's location data. I can see which of these IDs routinely goes to a major media company. So now I know the ID of the reporter, and now I can go back in time. The article that offended me was published on February 12th. And I could say, okay, I want to know everyone that reporter met with in the 2 weeks prior to that article being published. So now I can trace back and see, oh, the article was published on February 12th. On February 7th, 5 days earlier, this reporter went to a park about 6 blocks from their office, and they sat on a park bench with somebody for over 40 minutes. Who is that person? Well, let's click on their phone and follow that phone back to where that person sleeps at night. Oh, that person works for this organization. This doesn't require a warrant. It just requires a subscription. So anyway, coming back to the question that was asked about our privacy, the vast majority of people, law enforcement can track you through fog data science. Now, if you are extremely secure in your digital hygiene, you're not giving apps access to your location, that's going to make it much harder for someone to find you in this database. There are other tools that can be used to track you. But if you're not being picked up on this really broad one that picks up nearly everybody, now it becomes a lot more work. Now you're going to have to be targeted. And there are all types of spyware that you can be targeted with that will infect your phone, share lots of information. But that is much more expensive, much more challenging. So again, I'm going to switch back to the other screen. Again, the issue becomes, what is your particular threat model? If you are the average citizen, your number one mission should be going in and either deleting apps or restricting the permissions that your apps have to try and keep your data out of fog data science. If you are a high-profile individual and you've already done that, now your threat model shifts a little bit. If you are a person of interest, we'll just leave it at that. But if you are a thorn in somebody's side, you could become the recipient of some additional attention. There may be agencies willing to spend money to get your location. It's going to cost money. It's going to take effort. They're not going to do this to the entire U.S. population, but they will do it to people that are, quote, enemies of the state, or nuisances, or suspected whistleblowers. Apple has a lockdown mode, and that lockdown mode, it's free. It's built into the iOS operating system. If you turn on lockdown mode, it's free, but you're trading convenience. If somebody sends you a link by text, it's not going to work. There's a whole bunch of things that get disabled on your phone while you have lockdown mode engaged. And the whole purpose of that is to make it much, much more difficult for someone to target you with spyware. So you're trading off convenience to make your phone more secure. For most people, there's no need to do that. But if you're a higher profile person, it may be something you want to consider. AI will know that you've deliberately gone and can easily flag the disappearance as suspicion. It's a dystopian hellscape, plain and simple. I agree with that. At home, my phone has a place. It's kept all the time, except when I'm on a call or looking at a text, but I don't use it. Basically, I don't carry it around. That's good. How to join your Patreon? Thank you for the question. I'm going to switch back to my other screen real quick. This is my Patreon. It's patreon.com/businessreform. And you'll see a screen that looks like this. You can see the membership options. There's three different levels of support. Everybody gets free access to all of the videos that post on YouTube without commercials or sponsorships. I rarely do sponsorships in the first place, but you'll get all of the YouTube content. The other things that are unique for Patreon, I have some content that is not YouTube algorithm friendly because I talk about sensitive subjects that YouTube doesn't like me talking about. Also, I put recordings of live events on Patreon, and I use Patreon for a lot more interaction, soliciting ideas. This was my most recent post. I do have Brushfires of Freedom tour stops coming up, and let me list those real quickly. Give me just 1 second. I'm going to put these on my screen over here. One second. These are my upcoming events. Let me blow this up. Monday, March 16th. Now, I'm going to ask anyone that writes this down, please double check my brushfirestour.com website to confirm this. There is a restaurant in Auburn, Alabama called Baumhauer's, and I'm going to be there. The event starts at 7 p.m. Monday, March 16th, 7 p.m., Baumhauer's in Auburn, Alabama. Again, if you are planning to attend this, please double-check brushfirestour.com to make sure that this is confirmed. We have put in the reservation request. We are still waiting on the confirmation back from the restaurant, but that's only 2 weeks away, and I can't wait any longer to start advertising. Then on Tuesday, March 17th, just the following day, I'm going to be speaking at 7 p.m. I'm going to be speaking at Town Square Playhouse in Fayetteville, Georgia. Fayetteville, Georgia is just a little southwest of Atlanta. It is its own city, but it's kind of like a suburb of Atlanta. It's just a little bit southwest of Atlanta. And so that's going to be on Tuesday, March 17th. And then, again, please check brushfirestour.com. On Wednesday, March 18th, I'm going to be in Chattanooga. And on Thursday, March 19th, I'm going to be in Knoxville. So this is my schedule. So just to run over these again, Monday, March 16th, 7 p.m., I am scheduled to be in Baumhauer's in Auburn, Alabama. Please check brushfirestour.com for any changes to that. But that's where I'm planning on being. Tuesday, March 17th, this is during spring break at the university. Tuesday, March 17th, I'm going to be in Fayetteville, Georgia, and that's just like an hour and a half from Auburn. And then I'm working my way back home. Wednesday, it's going to be Chattanooga. The exact location in Chattanooga is we're still working out the details on that. That's going to be 2 weeks from Wednesday. And then Thursday, March 19th, I'm going to be in Knoxville. Again, details are still being worked out. That brings up an important point. You might notice Monday, March 16th at 7 p.m., that is when I normally do my live stream. And so what I am trying to do, I cannot guarantee this yet because I haven't tested the Wi-Fi, but I am planning on making that a live event that I will live stream a live event from Auburn, Alabama on YouTube. If that does not work, then I'm going to have to postpone my next live stream from the third Monday to the fourth Monday. I really don't want to do that. I want to be very consistent, first and third Mondays of every month. But my plan A is to live stream a live event, and then after that, we'll be back to doing them from my office again. Okay, I'm going to have to scroll down here to catch up with the latest comments. Dr. Padfield, have you looked into Epic/MyChart? I have not. Can you elaborate on what in particular I should be looking at on them? And the reason I ask that, my own general practitioner uses Epic and MyChart, so I'm familiar with it from a standpoint of that's what my local hospital and my GP uses. Privately held company. Any call or text regarding banking activity asking for bank payment always treat as a scam. I agree with that. Fayetteville, get local guidance on proper pronunciation. I have a person who lives in southwestern Georgia who is helping me set that event up. Fayetteville, that's the way I've always heard it pronounced, but I will definitely check local guidance before I get there. Will I be live streaming the events? I will do my absolute best to live stream the event from that Monday because that coincides with when I normally do a live stream. The other events I will probably be recording. I try and put all of my recorded events on Patreon. The receptionist who would not identify herself by name said they hold no information. An article I looked for stated they do. The owner had the compound. Huh. I was not aware of that. One of my cousins should have lost her high-pay hospital job for searching into my medical records years ago. Ooh, that's a big no-no. I turned off Siri. My phone is mad. My car is mad. But you're probably a whole lot better off. They typically have official correspondence via physical mail still. Also, there's a ton of scam mail. Okay. My very limited experience with Epic and MyChart has been generally positive. I do get notifications from there. Thankfully, I am in pretty good health. I'm not on any medications, which is pretty rare for a man my age. But I do have annual exams, and I get notifications from my doctor if my doctor has an issue and needs to reschedule or something. So my very limited experience with Epic and MyChart has been pretty good, but I will take a look at that. At the very least, MyChart is a centralized record of your health info. When certain political opinions become defined as mental conditions, that's a very legitimate point. Pattern of behavior, biometric data, yep. Do any of your students ever talk to you about issues you speak on YouTube? How often do your students understand the issues you address? I am very cautious about what I talk about in class. Now, I'm me, but I am very, very sensitive about not pushing ideas on my students. I do try to ask questions that are thought-provoking, but I certainly don't want to be guilty of pushing any ideology. And so I ask questions to challenge. I do my best to teach students how to do research. I have a couple of students who have taken specific research courses with me where they get college credit for doing research with a faculty member. But in terms of the issues that I talk about, okay, I am going to draw a distinction here between my undergrad students and my grad students. My undergrad students I have for classes like operations management and supply chain management. My grad students, I teach data analytics. And so there is some overlap between my grad student classes and what I talk about on my channel. For instance, my first semester data analytics class, when I have my grad students, the first third of the semester we spend focused on ethics. And I go over numerous things that I have talked about on this channel. For instance, a number of years ago, MIT students published a paper talking about creating, quote, gaydar on Facebook. They wrote an algorithm that scraped information from Facebook that could predict a person's sexual orientation with over 90% accuracy. And the whole issue is their algorithm might identify somebody who their true orientation was different than what they publicly stated on Facebook. Basically, this algorithm had the ability to out people that didn't want to be outed. And we talk about that in class because that is a use of data. To me, that is a gross violation of privacy, but it's possible. And I feel very passionately about this. Before I teach someone how to use data analytics, I want to talk about the rules for using data analytics. I do not want to teach someone to go do things that I think are wrong. And so we spend the first third of the semester talking about ethics before I ever get into explaining how to use data. So anyway, that is about the only time that there is cross-pollination between my YouTube channel and my classes, is when my classes are about data analytics. Now I want to see a video on my chart. I will definitely take a look at that. It gets overwhelming sometimes. Just when you think you're making progress, there's more to learn. Okay, I do want to share something positive with you before we wrap up, and we're past 8:30 already. We will wrap up by 9 o'clock, but I do have one, for lack of a better term, white pill to share with you. I'll do that in a moment. I love this channel so much, helpful and informative. Wish you had been one of my profs. Thank you. I genuinely appreciate that. I'm beginning to miss battlements of paper files. Yep. Super reputable. Better than any of mine. Nobody should be using any Meta products. Okay, I want to clarify something. I showed you my Meta glasses. I'm going to make a video called I Visited the Dark Side. What I mean by that, I do not like these. I purchased these specifically for testing. I now have 2 acoustic jammers because here is one of my biggest concerns with these. This is the normalization of personal surveillance. Yes, for years, people have carried this. For years, people have misused this. There was a woman about a year or so ago. She was arrested in California, and rightfully so. She was a young, fit woman who was in the locker room of some gym, and there was an older, heavier set woman in the locker room, and the younger woman was videoing this nude older woman who was not in the best of shape and mocking her. Absolutely uncalled for. And then she posted it online. And so you're filming someone where they do have a reasonable expectation of privacy in a locker room. You're filming them without their consent. You're posting nude video of another person online without their consent. And the woman who did it, she shows her face because she's mocking the woman that she's filming. She was arrested. And I say, good. That type of behavior should not be tolerated. That happened with this. It's going to get worse with this. And so I'm not a fan of people having face-worn cameras because it's just one more step to the normalization of you can't leave your house without being on multiple cameras. Anyway, one of my concerns about this is not just the video, but also the microphones, because this will pick up conversations. So if I'm sitting at a coffee shop having a conversation with somebody at my table, and somebody at an adjacent table is recording our conversation, technically that is illegal in the state of Indiana, because if I'm having a conversation with someone and I record it, that's fine because I am a party to the conversation. But if a third party who is not a party to the conversation records us, that is illegal. But with these, it's very easy. And so I have 2 acoustic jammers. One I purchased and one was given to me by a friend of mine when I was down in Fort Lauderdale. I'm going to test both of these acoustic jammers to see, are they effective at killing the ability of these to record conversations? Now, here's the problem with acoustic jammers. The one that I purchased was outrageously expensive. It was, quote, on sale for $400. All it is some ultrasonic transducers and a little microprocessor and a battery. Grossly overpriced. And when I say on sale, the page that I ordered it from said regular $600 on sale for $400. That's marketing 101. $400 is outrageous. The person who gave me a second acoustic jammer, they purchased it a lot cheaper, but they had to import it from China. And now due to tariffs, they're much more expensive. The person who gave me this acoustic jammer told me that they had tried to import another 20 and they were confiscated at customs. Right now, it is difficult to get acoustic jammers brought into the United States. It's almost like there are people that are pro-surveillance and they don't like people having anti-surveillance capabilities. At least that's the way it seems. If you can't import acoustic jammers easily, what I would like to do after I test the 2 units that I have and fully characterize how effective they are, I'm thinking about designing my own. My background is electrical engineering. This is a pretty simple thing to do. I'm thinking about designing my own acoustic jammer and then turning it into a Kickstarter campaign so that anyone who's interested could go out, pre-purchase one. Their money would be used for actually funding the first run of these. And so I can't give you exact details on it yet. It has not been designed yet, but my goal would be to have something about the size of a battery pack, something that you might charge up and then recharge your phone or recharge your watch or something. But I would like to have a unit about so big that you go to a coffee shop, you turn this thing on, you set it down on the table between you and whoever you're talking to. You can't hear it because it's ultrasonic, but it wreaks havoc on microphones in the area to prevent microphones from recording your conversation. So anyway, Be looking for that video, probably coming out by the end of March. It'll be a review of the existing acoustic jammers that I have, and potentially there will be a Kickstarter associated with that. My chart has information. Doctor types about you. Yes. So you raise a really interesting point about how secure is my chart, because it is a third party that has access to all of this information. This is one of the best YouTube channels. Thank you. I bought 500 ultrasonic transmitters. Need to work on making acoustic jammers. Yeah, for the children. Acoustic jammer video on YouTube. Good point. I'm going to try. I should be able to do it. There is a much bigger channel than me that made a video about acoustic jammers a year or two ago. And so anyway, I will make the video and I will put it on YouTube. Make it Dr. P. I think there's a very high probability that I will. The generations that didn't experience life pre 9/11 don't know what privacy means. 100%. 9/11 was a massive turning point. It made political expediency. It paved the way for a piece of legislation that had previously been introduced. The Patriot Act, there's a lot of misconceptions about the Patriot Act. It had been introduced about a year or two before 9/11, and it went absolutely nowhere because people on both sides of the aisle said, no, that is way, way too extreme. Nobody would accept that. Well, there's an old saying in Washington, never let a crisis go to waste. Before the fires are put out at ground zero, somebody had dusted off that original bill. They renamed it because if you put a nice name on it, you have to pass it. They renamed it and they crammed it through in 72 hours. Yes, Ben Jordan. I've watched several of his videos. He was not the one I was thinking of, but I think he also made one about ultrasonic jammers. I was in second grade on 9/11. Truly don't know anything about the surveillance state. Yeah. I will never forget 9/11. I mean, most people that were of age on 9/11 remember where they were. I was in the shower. I was scheduled to fly from Indianapolis to Los Angeles that day. I had a late morning flight, and as I'm getting out of the shower, my wife came into the bathroom and said, a plane just hit the World Trade Center. And in my mind, I'm thinking a Cessna. And she seemed really concerned, and I hadn't seen the video yet. I just heard a plane hit, and I'm assuming that it's a little plane. But I got out of the shower, dried off, and then we watched together in horror as the second plane hit. And I told her, I'm going to go ahead and drive to the airport, but I may or may not get on the plane. And before I left the house, the FAA announced that the entire network, all of the planes were ordered on the ground immediately. So anyway, I was supposed to be flying that day. I was a college freshman when it happened. Everyone started talking about the draft coming back. Yep. Middle school PE for me. Sitting alone in the living room. Yep. Dr. Padfield, did you get to review Meshtastic? Thoughts on use case? We are up to 9 o'clock already. My apologies, because I have a whiteboard right back here behind the camera, and it's on my whiteboard to talk about Meshtastic, and I did not get to it tonight. I will talk about Meshtastic, and my apologies for not getting to that tonight. But we're up to 9 o'clock here, and I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. I will talk about Meshtastic. I'm going to leave that on my whiteboard, and I will make sure that I get to that the next time that I do one from here. So again, I just want to close by Reminding anyone who's in the area, please check brushfirestour.com to confirm these, but this is where I'm planning on being on Monday, March 16th at 7 p.m., Baumhauer's in Auburn, Alabama. Tuesday at Town Square Playhouse in Fayetteville, Georgia. Wednesday, somewhere in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and Thursday, March 19th, somewhere in Knoxville, Tennessee. That's the plan. Podcast, live stream, merch. This is my Civil Liberty Sentinels merch store. I've purchased a number of these things myself, the coffee mug, the water bottle. The whole idea here, I make a little bit of money on this. This is not about the money. This is about the discussion. I spent money hiring a human artist to make these designs for me. And the whole point is, when you wear Civil Liberties Sentinels merchandise, it looks like a real team logo. That's by design. These are conversation starters. You think about, we need more people that care about privacy. How do you go about starting that conversation? This is my attempt at how to casually bring up the subject of privacy with people that may not be aware of it. So when I wear my Civil Liberty Sentinels t-shirt, I use my coffee mug or my travel tumbler. It's a golden opportunity when somebody notices it and says, who are they? I've never heard of them. Well, let me tell you about them. There's another group that we refer to as the Surveillance Titans, and they're big business. Palantir, Flock, Fog Data Science. There's a bunch of companies out there making a ton of money collecting your data. And there is a smaller group of activists who are trying to stop this. Some are attorneys, some are researchers, some are journalists. But, the Civil Liberty Sentinels are the people that are trying to bring an end to this level of mass warrantless surveillance. So anyway, if you are interested, this is the address, business-reform.myshopify.com. So that's all I have for you for today. I'm just looking at my whiteboard over here. We did not get to CloudBot. We did not get to Meshtastic. I did talk about the live stream. I am planning on doing a live stream on YouTube 2 weeks from tonight from Auburn, Alabama. I'm going to do my best to make that happen. In the event that it's not going to work, I will post something online, but it's going to be real close to 7 p.m. 2 weeks from tonight before I know one way or the other. With that, thank you for your support. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for all the comments. Please share these videos, and not just the live stream, but the other videos that I have. We have a movement going here, and I am proud to be standing with you. And thank you for your support, and I look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks. Have a great night, everyone.